The type of attention you get and who you get it from determines where we end up in life.
We are we got.
Jesus has already been accepted at the University of Texas in Austin, electrical
In a
engineering.
community where the statistics aren't the best, the default isn't the best either.
The gentleman who's going to be on the field representing South San,
Defensive captain of the varsity football team.
Mr. Jesus Rendon.
Giving his life to giving back to this community.
St. Joseph's Catholic Church Choir.
So I decided to start a nonprofit called Building a Purpose.
And if we can raise that default to be something of higher standards,
Help students find their purpose in life.
I think we can do something
We all we need.
special by
Welcome
default.
to the Jesus Rendon podcast, where we talk about life, purpose, and God. Our next guest here is Dr. Ryan Lugalia-Hollon, who is currently the Chief Impact Officer at the San Antonio Area Foundation and currently sits as the board chair for the Children's Funding Project, a national nonprofit organization that focuses on growing public investments in children and youth. Previously, he was the CEO of Up Partnership and served as the executive director for Excel Beyond the Bell, San Antonio. He's a published author of the book, The War on Neighborhoods. And recently, in 2020, he was selected as the Outstanding Young San Antonian by the Rotary Club of San Antonio. And more recently, he was the Hero for Children by the State of Texas Education Agency. State Board of Ed. Wow. Ryan, thank you for coming, brother.
Great to be here, friend. Great to see you.
Appreciate it. And how's life? Anything wild, new that's just come off the cuff for you?
You know, I'll start off with a story. So tonight's date night. I was telling you that every Thursday night, my parents spend the night, or my parents host cousin sleepover. So our kids and my sister's son, and sometimes my brother's younger daughter, they all sleep over at my parents' house. So it's date night for me and my wife.
Nice.
And
It's a weekly thing?
it's most weeks,
Most weeks,
not all
okay.
weeks, but most weeks. And it's part of why we moved to San Antonio 10 years ago, was to have my parents in the lives of our children and my children in the lives of my parents. But you know, my wife and I hit 15 years of marriage this October, so we're excited
Congrats.
to celebrate that. We're already planning that. And but we had a really good New Year's Eve. So when you ask what's new, so for New Year's Eve we had like a fancy night planned. We were going to go out, make it count, and our oldest daughter got sick. So we scrapped the plans and we just hung out at the house. And our oldest daughter was resting, but she visited with the son. But my wife and I just had the best conversation we've ever had. It was by far the best New Year's I've ever had, because we just kind of hit these
Ever?
higher levels. Yeah, maybe one of them. Higher levels of connectivity and consciousness. And we just went there together, and like we're just thinking about time and purpose and who we really are as beings in a deeper way. So I'm proud to say that like the newest thing in my life, really, despite title changes and all that, is just hitting a new level of my marriage, and it feels awesome.
Wow, yeah, 15 years. So that's awesome. New Year's was really divine.
We were
for you
vibing.
guys.
Yeah, it was divine. We were vibing for sure. And it was also a reminder of like, hey, like, don't underestimate what's possible in daily life and in a simple conversation. And it's not about, a big party or a fancy restaurant or any of that. It's just like, what can you achieve in this moment with the people around you right now?
Right.
And that's where the party's at.
That's right. How do you get in that mindset?
Well, momentum matters, right? Like, so when you find that mindset, how do you keep it going? I think there's a few things. So, and I'll talk in general, and then I'll talk about marriage specifically, or partnership, or relationships specifically. So, in general, I think there are times where you prepare yourself to be receptive. I had a Tai Chi teacher, Dr. Hannah, who would always say, "When you're connected, you can connect." So, if I'm disconnected from myself, how am I going to connect to God or the universe or the world or energy around me?
Right.
So how do I make sure that I'm, flushing the stress from my system? We've talked about that before, and just, kind of reaching internal alignment. But then a lot of it's also just a gift, and it's about being open to the gift. But, many people in leadership, we wake up in the middle of the night, we have ideas, we have stress, we have anxiety. But I find that middle of the night, I like to sleep through the night. That's my goal. But at the same time, a lot of my best spiritual experiences have been in the middle of the night, just like, so quiet, you can really be present in a deeper way if you're open to it, and just receiving, right? Do I have the capacity to receive? So connection, sometimes, I would never say we create it, but we prepare ourselves, and then hopefully, at least some of the time, we're open to allowing that connection to happen.
Right. Yeah, some of the most quiet nights, right, are the loudest in your head too. And so if being able to listen to yourself and flesh ideas out where typically you're normally talking them out for the first time with somebody and that didn't sound right. It wasn't what I meant it to be in my head or whatever.
100%, yeah. And how do we get out of our head more and into our heart more? Like, there's often, we think of like, oh, it's really about brain power. But heart power is much more important. And the brain really should be a servant to the heart. So how do I literally, Dr. Hanna, who I mentioned, who would always say, smile love into your heart. There's a lot of Tai Chi folks out there who talk about different kinds of internal smiling. But how do I allow myself to experience myself beyond my thoughts? And that's really important foundational work.
Right. And with that balance, right, it seems like most people who have that combination of the two seem very graceful, right? Very genuine, very authentic. And, it's hard because we're all practicing to be our best selves, right?
Yeah.
And some people have it down very well, and some people are a little rough around the edges and don't know any better until they reach that level of self comprehension, right?
But also, I think part of being human is like the roller coaster of it, the highs and the lows. True. Did you watch the Jamie Foxx special on Netflix?
No.
You got to watch that. So, but it's
recent.
Yeah, pretty new, and it's he had a real life-threatening situation that he survived.
I heard about it. I did.
It's good, and it feels like church sometimes. It's also really profane. So it's like very divine and very profane. It's just purely human, integrated. Those things integrated, and there are times where we're on fire and we're like, whether it's through connection or through the quality of our ideas or our ability to communicate, whatever it is. There are times where we're just like, bam, let's go, let's be rock stars.
Right.
And there are times where it's like, I can't get out of bed, I need a nap, like I feel like junk. And it is, some people might be better at like being graceful a greater percentage of the time. Some people may just be better about not going outside if they're not in a good place or not getting on the internet at that time. But I think, I don't care who you are, we all go through those ups and downs, and that's just part of being alive.
Right. Let me on this subject of connectivity, I also want to get to some of the poetry and topics, because that's one of the things I enjoyed doing the most growing up, and I haven't written, believe it or not, I haven't written a poem in over 10 years now.
Really?
Yeah, and I know to the date because I would date them back then, and it seems like kids. When I had kids, I seemed to shift my priorities quite a bit over.
Yeah.
But on the subject of connectivity, what was your first recollection of how we met?
You and me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was through Excel Beyond the Bell. You were running Building the Purpose. I was impressed because you built an organization that does a great job of getting mentors involved. So I'm always interested in what are programs that don't require a ton of staff to scale. And you have a model that can do that. It's also allows young people to think about very specific paths to success through different vocational callings. So I'm an ideas guy. So like, I am not going to remember the setting, but I'm going to remember the idea. So when I first think Jesus Rendon, I think, okay, this guy figured out a model that allows him to bring in people who care about this geography or alumni of South San who can help the next generation see paths to thriving, paths to a living wage, paths to professional success. And you kind of wrapped a nice structure around that. That's what I remember.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think, I feel like a lot of times when you lead with your heart, the rest of the things, and it's organized, right, and planned.
Yeah.
Leading with your heart with the organization and proper planning, sometimes the resources find themselves and the relationships build off of that. And I think, building a purpose at its core initially was just my friends and Judith's friends, right? And then it grew to be more than just our immediate connections and network. My recollection, and that's why I wanted to ask, because I wanted to bounce it off. But when I was in Austin, when I was working back in Austin,
those were long drives.
And I was driving back and forth. I met with a lady who was running E3 Alliance. Her name was Susan Dawson.
Yep.
She connected me, I believe, with Susan Thompson, who was who was a chief impact officer, I think, at the Area Foundation. And I think it was her who connected us.
That makes sense.
So or maybe it was Susan. I mean, they were both Susans, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I remember connections, and I remember a lot of little detail things. And I mean, I could tell you, I doubt Susan Thompson probably remembers our conversation that we had, but I remember her husband worked at Applied Materials. We were both making the same drive, and
Cool.
So I mean, those things. But to think on the subject of divine connectivity, to go from E3 Alliance to Area Foundation to Ryan. And the work you were doing with Excel Beyond the Bell, building a purpose, supporting those efforts, and E3 Alliance kind of being, I think there was a lot of parallels in P16,
100%,
right, between E3 Alliance at the time, and then to now find you at the San Antonio Area Foundation, where Susan Thompson once was, right? Just how beautiful that picture and that map looks, right? And then it takes me to the whole enneagram. Is that how you pronounce it?
The Enneagram.
Enneagram.
Yeah.
That you shared with us, and I'll go into detail more when we have more time, but it couldn't have come at a better time, and me and Judith were at a right place. And you talk about being both present, being both divine, to where although physically and health wise she wasn't like exactly there, but we had spent so much time together, I think, and us being in the same place, I really have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
We read through it, and actually we were so tired, didn't even really want to read through it. I copied and pasted and had her read it out loud to the both of us, because she can't sit through me reading the same line 20 times till I'm like, oh, that's what that meant. But I just want to thank you for that. And it just, when you see the lines of how, two's connected with this or that.
Yeah.
What a beautiful divine connection intervention that to me, when I was prepping for this, I was thinking, wow, ain't that something?
Yeah, man, it's all around us. Like those special threads are all around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and whether you use the framework of a quantum universe or, God threads, whatever framework you use, we are connected. It's just we become ignorant of that sometimes,
right.
And sometimes we reclaim our awareness of that, or some degree of awareness of that. My dad used to have a license plate. I was a 40-plus year preacher. His license plate said CSS, which stands for Confirming Signs of the Spirit. So he just drove around. So I grew up in a household where I'm kind of looking for synchronicity.
Sure.
And when you look for things, you often find them, or you're more likely to find them.
Right.
So that's a big blessing for me to kind of grow up with that outlook.
Right. How did you hear about the
Enneagram?
Enneagram?
So it's a church group. It was a Trinity Baptist Church. My wife and I joined a group of young adults who were going deep on it. And what's cool about the Enneagram is there's some controversy around the origin. Some say, it goes back to the Desert Fathers, like ancient Christianity. Some say, there's deep ties with the Sufi. There's deep ties in parts of Latin America. But it was started to become public and popularized in the United States a few decades ago. Anyway, so it's super popular now. Like there's a lot of teachers and coaches who use that framework. It can be applied in religious settings. It can be applied in just relational settings, but it can also be applied in totally secular workplace settings. For me, it's been helpful across all of those things. So I learned through this small group, and then I went on to become both a certified coach in general and also a certified Enneagram coach, because I just believe in the framework that much.
Right.
And part of what it does is helps you to see your shadow side. So what is it that blocks connectivity? What keeps us from being receptive? What keeps us from allowing that awareness to a bigger world, which leads to growth, right? And part of that is just kind of the habitual thought patterns and emotional patterns and inertia that we get stuck in. So the Enneagram does a really precise job of helping us to be aware of those things, both to see our gifts, but also to see the shadow sides of those gifts, and the way that something that can be a superpower in one context can be a real constraint in a different context. And I love that. Like most leadership assessments are not going to be like, bro, you're great at this, but this is killing you.
Yeah.
Most leadership assessments are like, bam, here are your top 5 strengths, or like you're great at influencer, or you're great, you're a great process thinker, or whatever. That's great. We need that. But it just doesn't pull any punches. And for me, that was huge. And it's just been like, oh, now I see the loop that I've been stuck in. I see this box that I've been trapped in, now I can start to look and live beyond that box.
Right. Yeah, the thing I like about it the most, I'll tell you, I've done a lot of, I'm sure you have as well. We grew up in we grew up through the Catholic faith. I was in lock-ins. I've gone to tons of action
Lock-ins,
retreats.
man.
Yeah,
Lock-ins.
There
Shout
you go.
out.
We did a whole bunch of faith-based
Yeah.
workshops and retreats, and I'll tell you the thing I like the most. Oh, well, the thing I did not like at most of these exams is context is so important, and when the questions are so vague, I can think of putting context to why my answer would be 100% different either way.
Yeah.
What I liked about an Enneagram, I keep saying it wrong. Enneagram was it had a little section. At least it narrowed in the last 3 months, right? It said this, with personal relationships or whatever. This, and so I'm like, okay. Now I can be a little bit more honest, right? Like because of course we put our best foot forward, right? And it's crazy because we went through the whole TEA Lone Star Governance thing. And they had a section on integrity and how we act and who we try to portray and all that stuff. So having just gone through that and then looking at this new framework that you shared with us, being able to apply context to it, I think is very important, because then you get another level of honesty and you get more level of accuracy. So then when it published the results back to us and Judith and I were reading it, it was nice to have it read to us because it wasn't her voice and it wasn't my voice. It was that third party's voice that's been reading our mail,
Yeah, totally. And I mean, a couple things we've talked about so far, like how we miss each other in communication, right? And also like the fact that some of our junk is predictable, right? And those are connected. So I like to say it's a miracle when two people understand each other. We often are like, oh man, we miscommunicated, big deal. No, really, like miscommunication is the norm. It takes a lot of work to get clear with another human being. And the more people you add to the mix, the more work it takes. So I think that's really key. With the Enneagram, I mean, part of what it shows, like it or not, is that as humans, we have predictable patterns. Enneagram means 9 types. And then depending on how you think about it, there's subtypes. So you could say there's 27 types. But we kind of have some default settings as humans that map onto ways of navigating in the world and harnessing our energy more efficiently. But it can make us more predictable until we get free of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was beautiful. It was great for us to have that opportunity to connect. She noticed that she said, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but there wasn't a line between her number and my number. On the.
Well, what that means, so for folks who aren't familiar with the Enneagram, there's these 9 types, and we all hover around one type or another, but we all have access to at least 5 types, and the goal is to access more and more of the energy that's available to us, so that we can show up with what we need to match any context that we're in. But if I can share, like you as a 2, right? You're right next to 3 and 4, and then as a 2, you also have the line to 4 and a line to, I'm blanking on it, right? 8 maybe. Or I don't know. I'm blanking on it. But you have access to 5 types easily, and Judith has access to a different one. So like as a 9, access to the 8, access to the 1, access to the 3, access to the 6, and so that means that as a couple, you guys can bring a lot of dynamic energy, but it might take some extra work, right, to see the world in a compatible way sometimes. Part of what that kind of introspection and joint introspection in y'all's case unlocks is just the ability to be more aware of what we're feeling, right? I think one of the places we get stuck and thus the connectivity gets blocked is not welcoming our own emotions. Am I feeling pissed off? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling disappointed? Am I feeling happy? Am I feeling enthusiastic? Am I feeling excited? What's the difference between all of those things, right? And the more that I can be like, in general, for me, speaking as a 7 myself, I don't like hanging out with negative emotions, right? Then I slowly in my journey started to realize, I block out a lot of anger. Like, I don't let myself feel anger during the day. That's why maybe sometimes in the middle of the night I wake up with it, right? And until I can integrate that anger into who I am, I'm not going to be able to show up for people the way that they deserve and that the moment deserves. So, another teacher of mine, Dan Newby, who runs the School of Emotions, he talks about emotions as the unopened gift. Because one of the ways that the psyche or the soul communicates to us is through our feelings. You know, every feeling carries a message, and how adept are we at unpacking that message? And so I link that to the Enneagram, because if you're stuck working in this one way, then you're going to miss all of these other signs on the road, right?
Right. Yeah, well said. I think I vibed greatly with your explanation of why, you know, although we don't have a line going to each other, we've always known we were opposite, and we've always known that we balance each other out. What she's good at, I'm not so good at, and I think you know, growing up together, we've always seen that between the two of us. So it's just, again, from that third party saying it to us was something powerful.
Well, that's the whole beauty of a committed partnership, right? Is like to recognize that, oh, I can become more than what I started as, right? And the closer that I can grow to Michelle, my partner, then the more that I can start to understand her mindset, her heart set, her spirit, then I can recognize, whoa, like I actually have access to a much bigger world. Like back to that New Year's Eve conversation, like I can keep growing and access new vibrations. And I'm very learning motivated, Jesus. So that's what drives me. I remember actually having a fear when I was younger. I don't know if I was 12 but I was around that age, kind of preteen age. And my fear at the time was, oh man, like, is there a point in adulthood where I'm going to stop learning, where I'm going to stop growing? Because that seems terrifying. I didn't want to be stuck in stagnancy or just one level of operation. So for me, life partnership has been an amazing way to commit to lifelong learning. And it's, you know, it's been awesome. And I'm super grateful that I'm in a partner who shares that mindset.
Yeah. One of your gifts, I'd say, is, you know, almost every conversation I have with you since the beginning, since we've known each other, I've always felt like you were trying to learn, but me walking away from that conversation knowing I've learned more than what you shared. Yeah, I mean, knowing that I've learned more, but you were the one who seemed more into the conversation as if you were the one learning, if that makes sense.
It does, but it's, I mean, the cool thing about learning is it's not zero sum, and we actually all need to learn. So how do we have, you know, a friendship like we have is a setting where we can learn together. And that doesn't mean we're taking away the same lessons, right? But we're both progressing on our journeys.
Right. Well said. So shifting gears a little bit into the poetry. I've heard a few of your poems in different sceent at camp, at retreat. I've heard you in front of the Alamo Dome at the charity bar. And how long have you been writing? And because you are a published author, right? And the work you did with your book, man, we can go hours for that in that conversation too. True champion. I mean, when I read that you got that award, Hero of Children, man, we need more people like that advocate for, you know, I almost see kids as being, and students especially, another brick in the wall that Pink Floyd song, right? It's almost like a prison, right? The structure, but to have an advocate and that's what building a purpose is about. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share with you my experiences. And if you want to learn from, and we're equal, we're the same. So having that mindset of being an advocate, being a hero to a child, right? Just giving them the voice, because, you know, you're older and there's that implied respect. There's that bridge in generations. But sharing that with them, with the combination of their voice, is something noble. And what that does is that bridges generations. That's how you make divine connections and relationships that last years. So, yeah, I'd love to talk about your other book, and I'm sure there's an aspect of that in there as well. But how did you get into poetry? Was that before? After?
Do you remember the movie Slam with Saul Williams when that came out? Man, okay, so I was like 16 and this movie Slam came out.
Who was in Slam?
Saul Williams, Sonia Sanchez, I think.
Okay, Sonia Sanchez.
But it was just on fire, man. And there were all these performance poetry scenes in D.C. and, you know, like a jail setting. And Saul just snapped off, man. Like, he's just this incredible spoken word artist who, really creative dude. And he just showcased that every moment that he was on screen in that movie. And, like, I stayed up after watching that movie just writing. And so, like, 16, you know, for the rest of my high school career, I just was writing and figuring out how to do that, how to share. And it, like you, man, like it went on and off like that. Sometimes I nurtured that gift, sometimes I didn't. The older I got, the more I realized, like, oh, I gotta unbury that thing. I need to keep that part of me alive. And so in recent years, I've just been recommitting to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have enough to publish something, or you
Yeah,
how are you,
I have a
plan?
book out that I've submitted for publication, and hopefully gets picked up. If it doesn't, I'll put some stuff out on my own. But
What's the name of the book?
really, it's just about sharing. It's called Pockets of Presence, and it's
Pockets of Presence.
Yeah, because you got
Is
those.
it pun intended, or
100%. Yeah, it's building off pockets of time, and we're either here in that pocket of time, like truly here, present, or we're not, and we all go in and out. And it's about that journey of going in and out of presence and the conditions that support that, and how our experience of time, and actually science backs this up, but our experience of time is mediated by relationships, by other things like that.
Oh wow, what a great title.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I hope to get it out there, and it was cool to meet your dad and your high school English teacher at the one event at Charity Bar.
Middle school,
Middle school, yeah. So I hope you keep your writing journey going. Let me share a piece or two.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so let's do one about children, and then I'll do one about learning. So this is just a super short piece, but because young people need protection. We know that as parents, we know that as advocates, and I'm grateful that you and Judith are, dedicating your lives to young people amidst all the other things that you do, and your network and your board, and we just, it's like supporting young people is where common sense and compassion meet, right? Like it is, It makes zero sense to not invest in the literal humans who are going to be inheriting every system and every facet of our world. It is the dumbest thing we could do, in my opinion. So this is a short one, man, but it's called Vision. And it's, for me, this piece is really about having the courage to listen to what we're receiving from divine connection and put that into practice and put that into application. So prophecies can't restore the past, yet each dream we cast buries a secret weapon in the not too distant future. Our children may soon need to dig them up and use them for their defense. I'll read it one more time. Prophecies can't restore the past, yet each dream we cast buries a secret weapon in the not too distant future. Our children may soon need to dig them up and use them for their defense. So think about any young person who shows up to your programming at Building a Purpose, right? Like, if you had not nurtured the dream of this organization, right, or the many different ways that applies, then the lessons that they're getting, the relationship support, the affirmation, the encouragement, the challenge, the growth that they're getting is not going to be available to them later in life, right? And when they need to, they're hitting like a next level challenge, they need that resource to go back to, whether or not you, Jesus Rendon, has committed to your vision will affect whether or not they have that extra resource to tap into. And that's true for all of us. This piece is, this is a different vibe, but it's really about humility and what are the conditions in which we can keep learning. It's called How to Miss the Boat, and it's kind of an instruction set for kind of being blind to all that's around us. So, how to miss the boat. Instruction 1. Believe the earth rises when you rise, sleeps when you sleep, cries when you cry, cares when you care, all moving at the speed of you. Instruction 2. Act indignant at the first sign instruction 1 may be false. Promptly remind yourself you are the controller of traffic and tornadoes, commanding conformity with even your smallest need. Final instruction. When farmers demand payment for their goods and squirrels refuse to share their winter storehouses, when your latest thinking is instantly outdated and people's questions do not arrive in a multiple choice format, act as if the world is made by fools. So the world is changing a lot right now. It's changing rapidly. And, it takes humility to recognize that, like, okay, maybe the way I'm approaching it, the way I'm thinking about it, the way I'm feeling through it is insufficient to keep up, right? And so how do I just recognize this is not about me. I'm a very, 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 very small drop in a very, very, very big ocean, and I need to pay attention, right? And I need to stay dynamic. I'll read one more in this little flow, if that's cool.
Go ahead, right ahead.
All right, so this one is about work I did in Chicago, which, you mentioned my book, The War on Neighborhoods. That's really about how do we help communities be safe? And what are the things we've tried? Where have they not worked? Where have they worked? And what is the driver of violence that far too many neighborhoods, whether you're in San Antonio or Chicago or Lagos or Nairobi or Medellin or, Beijing, right? Like there's violence all over the world, unfortunately. And there's different ways to deal with that. But this was a piece inspired by violence prevention work we did in Chicago. And I'll tell a little story after I share this. It's called Outpacing the Reaper. Why do people pull triggers? Is it for dollars and revenge, or to feel safe in a world where danger knows no end? Is it for respect on the corner and identity on the streets? Is it due to peer pressure or traumatized heartbeats? Here's my perspective. Let me know if you agree. I think people pull triggers because they simply don't believe in peace. They just don't think it's possible, at least not within themselves, where the pain can stack so high they chase a war or a cell. They've forgotten how to heal and wish only to feel numb. Or they've forgotten who they are, so chase their shadow with a gun. Yet the lives they take are real, every last single one, whether it's peers they thought were enemies or children chasing fun in their front yards when a stray bullet takes their breath, shattering their families' hopes, leaving them with little left. So what are we to do, we microcosms of it all, where every year the story sees more lives of all kinds fall? We must learn to grow faster, to outpace the reaper's reach. We must embrace our light and never be afraid to teach or heal or love or listen. Peace is not only possible, she was born to glisten.
Wow.
One of the things, and anybody who does social change work like we do, is like, what do you really want to expand in the world? And it's not enough to be against anything. It's really like, what do we need to create more of, and how do we do that? So that piece is about peace. But one of the young men who inspired me in the work we were doing in Chicago, so there's 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. One of them on the southeast side is called South Chicago. And there was a young man in that neighborhood who had a tattoo on his right forearm. It was real big ink, and it just said trust. And I was like, yo, like that's a really cool tattoo. Like that's inspiring. Like what prompted you to get that? And he just shows me the other forearm where it says none. And I was like, oh, okay, dumb Ryan. Like I get it. Like, yeah. And so, but that's real. Like a lot of us inside cannot experience peace, whether you're growing up in South Chicago or the Gold Coast in Chicago. People experience it and apply it in different ways, but it is it's incumbent upon us who have a vision to support young people to take action on that vision, so that those young people can know they're not alone, right? And especially for those who grew up without a network of supportive relationships in their lives.
Right. Yeah. What a great relatable poem that last one was. I mean, most people who go into a situation like that, they didn't start out that way, right?
Right. Nobody starts out that way. No, babies aren't born like, ready to pop off, right?
Right. Yeah, it's everywhere though.
Yeah, it is, because we fall short everywhere. Let me share a different piece about peace, but this one is one I wrote after the Uvalde massacre at Robb Elementary, and it was written. I was asked to write this for an organization, Communities in Schools, who sent a lot of social workers and grief workers down there. And there are many organizations that responded, both from Uvalde and from San Antonio and other places. And sadly, as we know, there's been too many Uvaldes around the country. But that doesn't stop those with heart from showing up and doing what they can. So it's called Truly There. We can't stop bullets or turn back time. We can't bring back the breaths of buried beloveds or resurrect a family line. For most of us, these truths are too much. We can't truly face them. So we look away, we stay away, we lay down distance from those disastrous days that remind us how very little we control. You, however, Each of you is cut from a different cloth, a cloth of courage. You carry cloaks of compassion and go wherever called, committing to causes where tears flow like waterfalls. You have chosen to be different, discovered precious powers of presence and patience, paying the price by placing your passion in the epicenter of pain, all while knowing your tomorrow will not be the same. You have chosen to be different, you who bear the cross yet again, helping young ones to brave boundless loss and brace for life as it never should have been. You've befriended hearts so broken they may never ever mend, but they will know they aren't alone. That is the only win. One each of you has given them by seeing but not giving in to the despair. You change the air, the energy, the silence, the rage. You help the world's wounded turn the toughest of all pages in the one and only book that should be banned. You did not let loss alone have the final say. You stayed and stayed until a new day finally started to break through. That was you.
Wow, that was a great one.
Thanks, brother.
Wow. Yeah, especially during that hard time.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Yeah. And
did the ink just flow after you put the pen down, or how did that one go?
that one just flowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. For me, poetry has always been about meeting a moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's always. Like, I haven't done a ton with it, but I like to whether it's responding to a tragedy or responding to an ongoing cause or issue, or just like showing up for a friend's birthday or wedding. Like I've always wanted to write for a specific moment.
Right.
I have tapped into like writing just more as a way of seeing, like poetry as a way to practice presence,
Right,
like am I
right.
really noticing the teeth on this,
This wild
this
hog
wild
from the ranch.
hog skull
My dad
you got.
got.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be there when my dad killed him, but my third daughter was about to be born, and my wife would not let me.
Good priorities.
Yeah, she would.
Yeah.
She'd never let me live it down if we missed it. That guy was close to 500 pounds.
But there's a ton of poems in that, right? Like if you're just paying attention, the lion on the wall, right? Like there's poems all around us.
Right.
And so I think as I get older, I'm learning how to pay attention in new ways, and then that can show up in the writing.
Has your poetry changed since? Actually, let me start with another question.
Yeah.
What's your oldest piece that you've had, that you still have, that you've written?
I don't have it with me, but it's called "Who Will Bring Justice to These Blocks," and it's really about that work of creating peace.
How old were you?
In the neighborhood. I was early 20s. Yeah, and I was
Okay.
heavily involved in the peacemaking movement in Chicago. And it was a piece that I wrote actually for a nonprofit organization that benefits young people that I was on the board of at the time. Yeah, that was a big one for me. I, as experience changed and other things changed, but let me read one more. This was about the pandemic and how we respond to the pandemic.
What's it called?
It's called Feeding Patterns.
Feeding Patterns.
And those of us in the education world know that like the chain of schools from an elementary to a high school is called a feeder pattern, like in a certain area. So it plays off of that idea. The world is suffering right now. The world is hurting a lot deep down where fear is multiplied by lockdown. Now this is deep pandemic years when this was written. Amidst all the pain, can you hear that pitter-patter of little feet as they travel through feeder patterns year after year? What are we feeding the patterns of the children we hold dear as class is disrupted, friendship put on pause, celebrations are canceled, learning is lost? As students scroll through tablets looking for more, and the world doubles its hurts, remodeling their cores, we must stop, look back and say, we need you. We're sorry. The world is a mess, and you without doubt are the very best chance we've got. We know security is not what a note says we own or the hearts that appear in the light of our phones. It's relationships that empower and expand comfort zones beyond red lines on papers, beyond red lines on maps, beyond society's colossal COVID-revealed cracks. Yes, the world blocks out brown futures, shoots down the beauty of black, but we won't just ride our white horses while the future's ransacked. Now is the time to give more than talk, to show up for our young and help them to walk through pitfalls and pandemics from cradles to careers. We will not be stopped by a virus or society's fears. And we all went through that together, right?
Yeah.
But we learned so much about ourselves, about what we value, about what we don't value. But I think it's easy to forget that today's young people were heavily shaped by that moment, right?
Right.
And they need the extra love, they need the extra care, they need the extra attention. They deserve that because they had a very different few years than we did when we were those ages. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very alone at times. I mean, literally locked, like you said, locked in. Man, that one was. I was on a ride for that one. Anytime I'm listening to slam poetry or just poetry in general, the ride. If you can hang on and follow it, those little. I like your part about the hearts that cracks, and right there, it's just boom, 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 just crack.
I mean, technology's great, right? But like the phones can't replace relationships. Nothing can replace relationships. We are wired for relationships. I mean, you talk about divine connectivity. That definitely. I have a friend who's an author who says relationships are how the universe makes wisdom, and I believe in that. Like you shared the story of us meeting. That's the universe making wisdom, right? That's the creation of wisdom through connection. And at a cellular level, we are wired for relationships. It's called interpersonal neurobiology. So I have slowly been learning about the vagus nerves, the vagal system. Polyvagal theory is basically about how the way that my face looks, my tone of voice, all of that
like micro inequities and
affects the people around us. I don't know that term, but it's like
your facial non-passive aggressive things.
Like if I show up and I'm talking like this and I'm like, we have a problem, it's very different than if I'm talking like this.
Right.
And that triggers different things in your nervous system and my nervous system. Right? So like we are just at a deep level. The quality of relationships around us affects our ability to experience peace and thus to access new experiences, a greater portion of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, I struggle with that. Matter of fact, we had our first board meeting at the school board, and my mom took a picture of me there, and she goes, "Look, they're smiling, and look at my son." and it's like I'm smiling inside, but it's that self-awareness. And man, my mom, God bless her, she raised 3 kids that all went to college, graduated, and 16 when she was pregnant with me. And to think she's been my best feedback loop. That's always pulled me out of the box and been like, I shake it off, and I've got to be intentional with it. Like, I'm sure the way my face looks right now isn't very excited, but I'm having a party.
You got a nice smile on your face, man.
Yeah.
But if you think about from any party. Think about any successful public leader. Like they know how to smile because that helps create calm, right? And I'm learning that too. Like I was that kid when I was young. Family picture time, I'm just making faces, right? Yeah. And they have to take the family photo 15 times until they get a straight face from me. But as leaders, right? We recognize we have an impact on the emotions around us, and a simple smile is a way to do that.
Well, that goes a long way, and a smile. Again, about connections, right? For some people, that's going to be the only time they get with you, or they'll remember for the longest of times.
Yeah.
Takes me to a little pivot here. Do you have another you want to share before I jump into this?
Let me see, bro. So,
I love this, by the way.
I'll tell you. Thank you for the space, man. Let me do one more if that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a piece from, you talked about Excel Beyond the Bell, and you talked about P16, and that became a partnership. So that's work that we did together with many other partners to build a movement that supports young people in deeper ways. Right. And we've seen some real success. So
real needle turning.
Future Ready Bear County, like since that launched in 2022, post-secondary enrollment has gone up over 4% in the county-wide. So we're seeing real progress.
Right.
But often in leadership, it's easy to forget that we can't do it alone. Like one of my favorite quotes is, "My greatest gift is my incapacity, because that's what makes me need others." And that's true for all of us. So whenever we feel that,
what a great quote.
Right? When we feel that failure point, that's saying, build relationship, reach out, don't try to do it yourself. And then examples like Future Ready and many others is like, when we do team up and keep that team going strong across organizations and sectors, we can do some big things. And that's what the world demands of us. So this piece is about that. Okay. It's called The Horizon's Gaze, right? Like this idea that the future is staring back at us, beckoning us forth. There is no impact without each other. No hope exists outside of sisters and brothers who band together to build a better world, a better future, where every child is welcomed without pitfalls on their path, and as they walk towards it, the horizon stares back, beckoning dreams to last past hunger and handcuffs, trauma and tests. By linking our leadership, we help each student find their best, to push and also to rest, to check off each milestone, eager for the next, to grow their full selves and invest in their tomorrow. That's future readiness. That's what it takes. And as they greet each new challenge, we must reorganize fate by transforming forces like race, income, and place. And one of the things that is way too easy to forget in our world is where you are born matters, right? Like, talent is everywhere. Yeah. Opportunity is not, right? And part of our work as leaders is to create a landscape where the American dream is real, right? Like where you really can, your work, your application of your talent can allow you to create whatever future you deserve. And the reality, like the hard science, the very clear data, look at Opportunity Atlas for the data on this if you don't believe me, is that where you are born doesn't determine, but has a heavy influence on your likelihood of experiencing economic mobility. And so the idea of transforming place, like transforming the power of place, so that any young person, no matter where they're born, can have a pathway out when they apply themselves, that's a big one. But no individual can do that alone.
Right. I mean, that's a big key to breaking the chain, you know?
Yeah.
What a... Well said. I'm gonna go back to divine connectivity.
Yeah, let's go.
And maybe not so fluent. Maybe not so connective. Tell me about a time when your first impressions didn't go, when you're presenting your best foot forward for the first time to somebody, and perhaps of an older generation, or perhaps of somebody in a role you've admired or just respected in general. It didn't go so well, where you fumbled on your first introduction.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I mean, I remember the first time I was an executive director of a nonprofit, and I struggled with presence, right? Like back to the Enneagram. Like before I really got aware of some of my patterns, I just lived in the future. I got a lot of ideas, my mind's working all the time, and until I could slow that down, I couldn't really be present in relationship. So if you can't be here now, then you're going to miss a lot of good first impression moments. But with my staff in that job, as I was supposed to be getting to know them, oftentimes, man, like I just was eager to get back to my grant writing or whatever it was. And so what I would do is just tell dad jokes all the time. Be like walking in the hall, just flip out a dad joke like, hey, how does a panda cook? With a pan, duh. And I'd keep walking. And rather than actually get to know that person, I'd just be like, you know, what kind of tree fits in your hand? A palm tree. Bye! And then I'd be out, bro. And so it was a lot of missed opportunity to build truer, deeper relationships with the folks I was lucky enough to work with in a pocket of time.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because to me, I was talking to Judith about this, and you know, my memory, I tend to remember like things a little bit more in depth with what the context was, how the scenario was. Maybe not so what I was wearing, but did I bring my lucky pen that day? Because you know, they'd give my dyslexic teacher back in the day gave me a little pouch, and I still wear that, and I left that at the house or whatever. But one of my moments, man, I fumbled the ball, and it's a specific instance, not a general behavior, an idea like that. But I won't say his name. But it was back when I was in Austin. We went to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I'd met his brother, and he'd been telling me about if I should meet his older brother and talk with him about things. And I think I'd read something in an article, more like a skim, and to me the article presented itself as if it was like, a combative. Two city leaders were kind of going head to head or something. At least that's the way I read it and didn't really read it, right? And so my first impressions in talking with them were like, oh, I read that article, and I was like, I know y'all don't like each other, and it's like, whoa, and I was like, okay, and then I tried to double down, right, and I just spiraled, and he's like, no, I don't have a problem. And I was like, oh yeah, I just read that article, and again, this was about 11 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And Judith was there, and I came back, and it's kind of my tail behind my legs, and I was like, well, that didn't go as planned, and you get caught up, and I think they had gotten an award at that event or something, but coming into first impressions, I think a lot of times, I often have to. I've never been a person to really believe in first impressions because again, kind of relating with your poems and the whole trust no one thing, right? It's like they're going to accept me for who I am, wearing your heart on your sleeve, growing up with that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Not until I became a little bit more mature and saying like, okay, there's a bigger picture to it, right? It's like, why won't they accept you? Why won't they see you as this? It's like, well, people at that stature are probably getting hit up by a whole bunch of different people. They don't know what they want, right? And it's like, you need to be able to present a case to why they'd want to work with you, right? And maybe it's a bit of a stretch to say that situation was exactly like that, but for me, it was very easy to just roll down that hole. And I always remember after that, what I learned from that is keep it short, keep it simple, and if it's divine connectivity, they'll come around later, and most of the times they probably won't even remember that first time.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I think a lot of life is about self-forgiveness, right?
Sure.
And because we're going to, literally, man, I still remember playing in the student-teacher basketball game in front of my whole middle school in 8th grade and, stealing the ball from, pass from one teacher to another and, dribbling down the court and, going for the layup and missing the layup and getting my own rebound and missing the layup again. I think I missed, 3 layups in a row. I still remember that. Does that matter today? No. Is it still? Do I still feel a little bit of embarrassment? Yes. Not that it matters, but it's just embarrassment is an emotion, right? And when you're embarrassed, you have often done something you want to cover up. Back to the emotions of it. So let's look at embarrassment, let's look at guilt, and let's look at shame. So embarrassment is I've done something I wish I could hide from others. Right. Guilt is I have violated my own values. I've done something I'm not proud of. Shame is different. Shame is I've done something that's a violation of other people's values. I may actually be okay with it, but I know that it violates the norms of the community. So those are 3 different things, right? And so when you think of a bad first impression with someone, did you rip your pants, right, and not realize it and then walk into a boardroom? Or did you say something that you regret because it's not who you are? Or did you say something that bothered them, but you didn't realize that until after the fact? Those are just 3 examples. Right. But the point of embarrassment, guilt, shame, and any other emotion is to recognize what it has to teach us, right? And the sad truth of being human, it's often the painful moments that teach us more, that teach us how precious an opportunity to make a first impression is, so that the next time I get to do that, I can keep it short, or I can be a little less anxious, or just, not try to get something out of it, or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. No, well said. The way you define words and explain, I mean, most people think of guilt, they think of the feeling. They don't think of the logic of how you described it. When most people think of shame, they think of the feeling. They don't think of the logic of how you described it. And I think when you understand those rules, you start to learn to grow.
100%. And that's, for me, that was a period of study. I study those things, and now sometimes I'll play the emotions game with my daughters, and we have flashcards, and we're like, okay, what's this one? What am I acting out? What does that mean? And just got to study what you value,
Right. Yeah, that was an example. I just in recent times, Judith and I were talking about it, and I was like, "Do you remember?" I asked her if she remembered.
Yeah.
And she barely remembered going to the event.
She's like, "What?"
She's like, I still don't remember. And to me, but again, going back to reflecting on that, and I think my lessons learned from that, keep it short. I want to jump through something we call the timeline workshop.
Let's go.
And feel free to share at whatever capacity you're willing to share, a positive, impactful event that happened in your life, or a negative, impactful event.
Okay.
And if you care to go through each year of your life, or if you want to skip it, decades by a time. It's just an opportunity to reflect on those positive or negative impactful events that really shape Ryan to be who he is today. And
Okay, cool. So let me just see what comes up. So one was 1992. I was born in 82. I'm an 82 baby. So just like, let's go earlier. So when was I in third grade? That was probably like 90, 91. That was the first year my parents let me walk to school and ride my bike to school on my own. Like, that was a big deal. Like being a third grader who could like ride over a mile, to school on my own, right? Like no supervision at all. So that early sense of freedom was big. As a preacher's kid, I have a lot of memories of being in the church and just being able to explore. Like what we actually did was like on communion Sundays, we would like go to the kitchen afterwards and get the extra grape juice and crackers and just like throw down because our parents were still working. I have memories of that, and a lot of memories of when you're a preacher's kid, like everybody knows you, so you feel like you could talk to anybody. But more specifically, 1992, my dad did a sabbatical in Kenya, and so it was my first time really spending weeks overseas anywhere and just recognizing it's a much bigger world and learning, not just going on the safaris, though that was cool, but just like going to the market and learning like there's a lot of ways that a city or that a village could be set up. And then I remember coming back to Kansas City where we lived at the time, and being in East Africa was the first time I remember seeing deep poverty. But when I came back to Kansas City, 1992, remember, was also the year of the Rodney King beating, so I don't know how that factored in the back of my mind. But that's when I started to recognize homelessness in Kansas City for the first time. I really had been blind to it. I hadn't really even picked up on it until I had that global experience that helped me see my hometown in a different way. So that was a big season for me. I'll fast forward to like when I was 11. Not long after, we moved from Kansas City to Louisville. That first year was rough, bro. Just like I had to walk away from all my friends and like learning how to make new friends. And I remember like all these kids today wear Nirvana shirts. 90% of them don't know any Nirvana songs, but like us real Nirvana fans, man, like I wore my heart-shaped box t-shirt every day almost for 6th grade. Like, and I like, but when we moved, like I was just a lot of teen spirit, man, just like really jamming out to Nirvana and learning. Part of that was learning how to be by myself, right? And starting to embrace solitude in new ways. And then we talk about youth development, right? Like I got connected to the community center in my neighborhood. It was a park center, Douglas Community Center, and just going there with the guy friends I was making and like hooping 4 hours a day. And my first job came out of that, working at a camp for young people with disabilities. It was a summer camp at Camp Taylor in Louisville, and did that for 2 summers. That was super formative. Went on to become a camp counselor. Had amazing kind of folks at that park center who just committed to me and helped me to see. So like one formative moment, like I remember I made a dumb joke about people shopping out of a lost and found, and the youth worker who was supporting me at the center at the time just checked me. He was like, "Ryan, that's real for people." And I woke up a little bit. I was like, oh, like how arrogant am I, right? To make fun of somebody else's very real condition. So those are a few. Fast forward, so let's go to college. So I went to school in Chicago on the South Side, but I had one of my best friends from high school was going to school downtown in Chicago, and we were at some party south of downtown, and I had rode my bike up there during broad daylight. We partied. We were out past 11, and I was like, "Hey, can I go home with you and crash?" He's like, "No, just ride home." So like, riding home 60 blocks, in the late at night in Chicago when I'm still getting used to that as an 18-year-old was big for me. Yeah. I had the great fortune of going to a study abroad in Buenos Aires, and this was after they had their big economic crash. And I was like terrified of taxis. Like I didn't want to get kidnapped in a taxi because it was a tough time there. So I got a bike and I just rode all around the city and made a ton of friends, and that was a really beautiful experience. So a lot of my growth experiences, like if I'm picking up on a pattern, it's just about new stuff, and going to new places, working with new people, trying out new things. And those have all been super formative for me.
How did you meet Michelle?
Well, the sun was shining. So I met Michelle.
Where's that poem?
Yeah, I didn't bring those poems. Yeah. Through community work. So I was supporting an organization on the southwest side that did youth work, and she had a friend working there, and she was supporting too. And it was a summer education program, and we both committed to helping run good programs. And there was one day where the people who were supposed to run the curriculum that day didn't show up, so we had to like
Figure it out.
yeah, just flow. And so her and her friend were going to do a workshop on healthy relationships, and I was like, okay, I'll do something on the 5 languages of love. And you know, these were young people from the southwest side of Chicago, and like I'm this white dude, and they're like, yeah, good luck. And they were just ready to sit back with their popcorn and watch.
Yeah.
But everybody loves love, and everybody
That's
wants
right.
to know how to love better. And so, you know, I just talked to them about like, what's your love language? And, you know, these are some predictable tensions in relationships, and they loved it. And I think that's when I first made an impression on Michelle. I saw her again, and we visited more. The next summer, I was doing an evaluation of a anti-violence program, and there was an event called Healing the Hood on the southwest side, a different part of the southwest side, little village. And she was volunteering for Healing the Hood. And it was just a beautiful festival of peace where like you take over blocks that often struggle with violence and create like youth police basketball tournaments on those blocks and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we got to know each other then. And then fast forward that winter, cuffing season in Chicago, it's so cold, people are often like, they're like, if you're not in a relationship, you're like, I'm like lonely, and it's freezing.
Winter blues, eh?
Yeah, it's real. And I reached out, and she was having a dinner party that weekend, and I stayed and washed the dishes at the dinner party for a little bit. I called my dad that night. I was like, hey, I might have just, met the one. And so we just hit that new gear. The chemistry clicked, and
Right.
we were engaged 4 months later, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah, but it was...
When you know, you know.
We the moment I proposed was spontaneous. Had not thought about it, had not talked about it.
Y'all both hadn't talked?
I hadn't even thought about it, right? I just felt the question and asked, and so
That's being present right there.
Yeah. So great people inspire presence too, and she's the greatest person I know. So
Yeah, y'all are certainly a powerhouse. She was at the foundation before you were, right?
she was 100%. Yeah, she was. She worked for Susan Thompson.
Back in those days. It'll be a little bit rapid fire here.
Okay,
What's your purpose in life?
learn how to love.
If you could call one person and you were on your deathbed, accident, God forbid, who'd be that one person you'd call?
Whichever one of my daughters picked up my call.
What would you say to each of them?
You're crazy, and I love you more than you'll ever know.
You had one last thing you could tell Michelle.
See you on the other side.
Has your faith always been this strong?
It's always
Maybe not so rapid in that one.
It's always been open. Like I never. I believe energy is bigger than language, and most religion is based on language. But God is infinite, right? Energy is infinite. So I think the most humans can do is approximate who God really is, and I've always believed that. At least from a very young age. And so yeah, I would say I've been very steady in that belief.
I was going to say, do you believe in God? But why do you believe in God?
It's not belief, it's just knowing, because I'm open to believing in God. I'm open to knowing that God is with me, and I practice presence, I practice prayer, I practice breathing, I practice smiling inside, and I get the feedback, right? Like I get the experience and the confirmation of a greater force.
How do you know if something is divine?
What's not divine? Like when you really think about it, like I think about flavor, right? You like good food, you taste great flavor. That's not just there to give you nutrients. Like that's from, there's a deeper chemistry literally going on there that is giving you a powerful experience. So I think the divine is like anywhere you care to look.
Well said. You promoting anything?
Building a purpose, support
Yeah,
that.
That's right. You
Yeah.
heard it first.
Yeah, 100%. Just glad to be on the Jesus Rendon podcast today.
And where can people follow you, support, and you talked about the nonprofit you're chair of as well. On
You
the
can
board and-
find me on LinkedIn, and for any kind of professional interest, like that's the place to go. Ryan Lugalia-Hollon. You'll look me up on LinkedIn. There's not a lot of Lugalia-Hollons out there, so
Yeah. Ryan, I learn from you every time we sit down. I learn from you every time we walk along the Riverwalk, every time we're in camp. It's a blessing to be in your presence, and I appreciate you coming out here and supporting the podcast, supporting our students at South San, supporting the Bexar County, and I know the work you're doing in your poetry, the work you're doing at the Area Foundation. we'll break that needle that we're turning here.
Let's go.
San Antonio,
Let's get
Bexar
it.
County.
Thank you, man. Great to partner with you.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Take good care.